All right, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining this morning's DLM District Coordinators Training. We have a packed agenda. We're going to walk you guys through um, and how to get into Educator Portal, do the things that we need you to do in that district role to help support teachers, and look at some of those other things. So I'm Tracy Gooley. I am one of our special education assessment specialists here at USBE, and I help oversee all of our alternate assessments for our students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. So if you are a teacher and you don't have a district role, and support other teachers, then this is not a training for you because this is all just geared towards district level folks and what their responsibilities are for managing district level data within DLM. So with that, a little bit of housekeeping. So if you would please just go in and name yourself. First and last name is how you're registered in Midas, so that we know so we can get you those relicensure points. And then if you want, you can add where you're from behind that, whether you're Davis or we've got Spectrum Academy, all kinds of different people here. So if you want to do that, that would be great. So in order to do that, if you click on the little box, um, your uh, video box, there should be a little icon that has three dots, and you can click on that, and you should have the option to rename. But that will help us get you checked in for those that registered through Midas and get those relicensure points to you. So closed captioning is available if you do need that today. Feel free to turn that on, and you should be able to click on the More button down on the bottom and choose captions. So that would be great. Trudy, sorry, I am a teacher. This is not for me right now. Thanks. Yes. So Trudy, if you need, did she leave already? Is Trudy still here? Trudy, do you need the registration course number for the teacher trainings that I do? Um, Let me get that for you really quickly, just in case you want that. So the Midas course number for teacher trainings, regional teacher trainings, I'll put that in the chat for everybody. But there it is. So it's 65632 for those teacher trainings. And we got a couple more coming up through October, November. Yeah, if you're just a teacher, this is going to be very confusing and not applicable to you this morning. Okay, perfect. So please feel free to raise your hand if you have questions, use the chat. We have about 30 folks on this morning, and we are recording this session, and it will get placed on our DLM district Padlet so that you can refer back to it, or for those folks that weren't able to join us, we'll be able to have that. Okay, so today's learning objectives. What we're hoping to walk out the door today is understand where you, as district folks who should have facilitator training information, we'll walk through that this morning so that you can go back and facilitate training with teachers if need be. We're going to talk about how we create teacher accounts, look at how students get into DLM. We're going to create rosters. We're going to look at all of our score reports. And that information we have in Kite Educator Portal, and also walk you folks through how to read a score report. We're going to look at all the test monitoring reports and dashboards that you have available to you as district folks to monitor all the test things. And then we've got a checklist for you, and of course, any questions. So really this training is about you and what your guys' needs are. So feel free to ask questions as we go about this morning. Okay. So we hopefully got everybody logged in and you have your Educator Portal account. So if you don't, please message Maureen or put it in the chat. She's here this morning. She's our assessment data steward to help get those accounts created for you. We'll definitely want to make sure you have a district role for sure. The next thing we want to do is I'm going to throw this link in the chat is if you are not familiar, we have a DLM District Test Coordinator Padlet for you folks. Um, put this in the chat. So you definitely want to grab that link if you don't have it and bookmark it. So this is kind of your resource hub, if you will, where you'll notice when you get in, we have all kinds of things where we link you to manuals. This training will be recorded and put up under here. I will get the updated PowerPoint, additional technical assistance documents, score report stuff, all kinds of things for you guys as district folks to kind of navigate your roles. Um, so definitely grab that Padlet link if you don't have it. Okay. Next, so just as an overview, high arching, what is the DLM alternate assessment? So our alternate assessments are for our students with the most significant cognitive disabilities whose IEP teams have determined that they qualify for alternate assessments and require that instruction through our alternate achievement standards, the essential elements, and therefore they take the DLM because that's what our DLM is aligned to. It is used in accountability. So our students who cannot access our core standards and regular assessments, they take DLM, and we use that in accountability, both state and federal, in place of RISE, Utah Aspire Plus, or ACT. And so we test grades 3 through 11 for English language arts and mathematics, and then we start science testing in Utah in grades 4. So this is that accountability assessment that those kiddos take. Again, it is aligned to our alternate achievement standards, the essential elements. So hopefully our teachers are using those instructionally to support our kiddos. And it is a computer-based and an adaptive assessment. There are multiple what we call linkage levels or access points for our students to engage in not only the instructional component of our essential elements, but also the assessment. So it is reduced in the depth, breadth, and complexity of our standards that are aligned to the core, but various access points for students to enter into the content. So again, the grade levels that we test, so ELA and math grades 3 through 11, and then science starts in grade 4. So in fact, you will not even have the option to see third grade students to add them to a science roster. This year's window. So we are what we call a year-end model state for DLM. They have two models. One is an instructionally embedded model and one is a year-end. So we are a year-end model. So when you're looking at resources, you want to make sure that you're seeing that year-end component. But that means we only require students to test DLM during that spring summative window. And this year that window opens March 9th and it closes June 5th. Or it closes 2 weeks before your last day of school. So we should not have any students, unless there's extenuating circumstances, testing in our spring summative assessments the last couple weeks of school. We do expect that all of our teachers are reading these specific pages in our test administration manual. So that stays the same across any assessment platform. And then I've linked here, the Educator Portal User Guide is an amazing manual to support teachers and you folks as well in how to access things in Educator Portal as well. Like it gives screenshots on how to get into all of the things. So these are the two manuals that are the most important in page numbers for teachers. This is the same information that I also present to teachers in teacher training and is also on that teacher Padlet that we have for teachers as well. We do have now what is called an instructionally embedded test window. So this is optional, but it opens usually every year that first week or two of September, and it's open all the way through February 20th. So they close that a couple weeks before the spring window opens. So teachers are allowed to engage in these instructionally embedded assessments, and I like to think of them as like benchmarks. So if you are a district or you know that you have schools that require your other students to participate in RISE benchmarks or those Utah Aspire Plus benchmarks or some other formative component, this is a great way to meet that need for that requirement for your kiddos that participate in alternate assessments. So we'll talk a little bit more about this as we move through this morning. Okay, DLM testlets. So how our DLM testlets work is they are delivered one at a time to students. So students in ELA, regardless of their grade, will see 9 testlets. And in math, depending on the grade level, they'll see anywhere from 6 to 8 testlets. And then for science, all grade levels see 9 testlets. So students are seeing anywhere from 24 to 26 testlets. Each testlet has anywhere from 3 to 9 items. Typically, what I've seen is about 3 to 5 items per testlet. And we talked about how this was adaptive. So the way that this works is there is a component that teachers need to fill out for every student account. It's called the First Contact Survey. And that gathers information from the student's disability, their communication, any sort of visual or hearing impairments the student may need. It goes through where they're at in reading skills, writing skills, math skills, science skills. And what that information does is it is using an algorithm. We talked about those five levels for ELA, math, and science, and then there's 3 levels for science right now. And what that information is doing is the algorithm is running to figure out, based upon that information, what is that linkage level or access point in that first testlet should be delivered to those students. Then from there, after a student completes that first testlet, that algorithm, that adaptive nature runs to adjust that access point based upon how a student rescored or responded in each testlet. So that's how that adaptive nature comes in. So students could be seeing testlets across the various access points. Each testlet can take about an average of 5 to 20 minutes to complete. ELA is typically longer. The way ELA testlets work is there's a what you would call maybe a reading passage or a reading story that the students read through, and then they come back and they read through it again, and then their questions or comprehension stuff is embedded within that second reading. So when you get into those secondary levels, especially those ELA passages, can take a little bit longer. But typically 5 to 20 minutes is about what it takes to complete one testlet. So when we go back to this testing window, what my advice is for you guys is to not necessarily box these teachers into like a 2 or 3 week testing window, where we set those testing windows for RISE and Utah Aspire Plus, is giving those teachers a pretty, depending on how many kiddos they have, a pretty wide window to test those kiddos, because it could take, a couple weeks to get through testing depending. So that's what my advice would be. If teachers have not started testing when you come back from spring break, again, depending on how many kiddos they have, they could run into trouble with completing testing. So just, think about that and be cognizant about the amount of time that it could take for students to complete testing. Okay, so some updated information on science. So we, as DLM partner states, along with some of you district folks, I think have participated, and some of your teachers maybe even, we have spent the last, oh my gosh, 2 or 3 years working to update our science essential elements. So when DLM first came out with their DLM science stuff, um, it was it's not as robust, and the learning maps and the essential elements and the what they call linkage levels or access points were not built out as robustly as what we have for ELA and math. There was some feedback too that they were missing a little bit of alignment in some of those three dimensions of our essential elements. So we have been working for several years now on really updating those essential elements, and they are finally finished. And they have begun doing some item development in the past year. And I know that some of our teachers and science folks, both general education science teachers, as well as our essential elements teachers, have been engaging in this process. So I am recommending that teachers start using them now. They're out, they're available. We've been talking about it in training as I go about with teachers. They are on the DLM website, so they are out there. And we will start testing those new standards next school year. So this school year is still based upon the old, or current, if you will, essential elements. However, we will be doing some field testing this year. So I have encouraged teachers to start looking and using at that. They haven't changed the content of what's in those standards a whole lot, other than what they've done is they've really like expanded those what we call learning progressions or skills. And so we've gone from from three linkage levels or access points to four. And it is still grade banded. That hasn't changed, but they've also added essential elements for our K2 kiddos. So some of those K2 teachers have been really excited to hear about that. So they are on the website and available, and I've linked here how to get to that. And again, they expanded those a couple of those three-dimensional areas in our core seed science standards. And they've also added a science glossary, which is super helpful and beneficial to teachers. So with that, why I'm actually recommending our teachers to kind of start looking at using those for instruction is we will be engaging in field test items this year. So we have to field test items before they become what we call operational, meaning that's what counts in scores. And we've spent a couple years as DLM partners trying to figure out how do we roll this out that's going to be best for teachers, and not overwhelming. And this is where we've landed. So unfortunately, we do still have to do all of those 9 operational testlets this year in science. And then what teachers and students will see is 4 field testlets that will also be delivered. And they're going to come down in what they call 2 test forms. So instead of 4 individual testlets, there'll be like 2 forms that come down with 2 testlets in each one for science. They will deliver at the very beginning of the window. So when our window opens March 9th, those testlets will be there alongside their other operational testlets. So there should be some indicator within that test session name that teachers will see that'll have, like, typically their field testlets have an FT in them. And so teachers can engage in those field testlets at any point. They could do them at the beginning. They could do a couple operational testlets, throw those other science field testlets in the middle. They can engage in that in any way they can. But we do need student data on that. So if teachers don't engage in that, what's going to happen is we're going to have like almost a full operational field testlet that will be required next fall. We will probably have to come back in next fall also and do some additional field testlet items because we got to get that data before it rolls onto the operational assessment. And so I do encourage our teachers to please complete these, which again also is why I'm encouraging them to think about using those new standards that are aligned to these field testlets. So if we don't do kind of any instruction in those various levels, it could hurt us in that data. So I think one of the resources that DLM has produced, it was a crosswalk of like, here's the old essential element, here's the new one. So teachers can kind of see what the difference is and when they're thinking about that instructional stuff. So that's where we're at with science field testing. Trying to think if there was anything else. I have told teachers, and something to think about is we don't chase children around the room with computers. We can't force kids to test. And we do know that sometimes the nature of this population can bring some of those behavior components. And so I have told our teachers that if getting through those operational testlets, if it took everything you had with the teacher and the kid, we are not here to punish children or teachers for testing, then maybe to forego field testing. But if they really can get through those, we're encouraging them to do that, if that makes sense. Okay. Christine, I see. Did you mention when the first contact survey needs to be given? So the first contact survey has to be completed before testing begins. So that's on that kind of teacher to-do list. So it definitely has to be done. Before testlets deliver down in the spring window. If teachers would like to engage in any of those instructionally embedded or operational, the instructionally embedded tests or those benchmarks, they have to complete that first contact survey before they can do that as well. So great question. Okay, all teachers who are administering DLM to students, regardless of how long they've been doing it, if they're returning or new, they have to complete DLM's required training. So new teachers, first time, or if they've had an absent, like if they've had, like maybe they didn't do DLM last year, their account was dormant, it wasn't active. So if they skip a year of training, they get re-delivered new teacher modules. But there's 4 of those that they complete. And then there's a post test that comes at the end of each module that they have to pass with 80% or more, or they deliver additional modules. Returning teachers only have 1 module, but they will have a 4-part post test. So I do have trainings that I host regional trainings for teachers across the state. So I have a slide in here a little bit later that gives you that information. So you're more than welcome to send your teachers to my training. I facilitate this required training in the morning, and then we dig into a bunch of stuff in the afternoon. So it's a full day training. It's not required to attend with me, but the DLM training modules are required. Okay, so you as district folks should have a facilitator training course in your Kite Educator portal account. So you could also come in, pull this over and show you. So you could come in and go ahead and set up a facilitated training as well. So when you log into Educator Portal, what you should see is this training button over here, which is the same as your teachers. So when teachers log in and get set up and they log into Educator Portal, they'll see this training. You do not have to complete the required training to access students or that first contact survey or P&P settings. However, you do have to complete training before you get access to this Manage Test tab for teachers. So when you click on training, this becomes a pop-up when you click on your training course. And so if you have pop-up blockers in your district or teachers have that on their computers, they'll struggle to access this. So just something to think in mind when teachers say, I can't get it to pull up. So as district folks, what you should be able to see is this facilitators course. If you, as district people, want to complete this training, I suggest that you do it through the facilitators course, because what it does is it will unlock all the resources for you. And it still checks the box that you've completed training. If, for example, let's say there's an emergency with a teacher, and this happens every year at least a couple times, where you've got a teacher that goes out and you as a district folks need to go in and help administer testing. So when you click on that facilitators course, or any of the courses, it pops up in the second screen, and then you can come through and take all of these trainings yourself, which, mind you, I have to do every year as well. So I complete all of our 4 modules every year myself. But you can go in and you take the modules, and then it opens up all of the resources for you, the transcript, PowerPoints, activities that you can do with teachers if you would like, and then the quiz answers. So this allows you to be in a space to facilitate the training yourself. If you are a district person and you don't see this facilitator course, please shoot myself and Maureen an email and we can look into that. Okay, so any questions about that? Excuse me. Okay, apologies. I'm on the end of a cold. It's that gets your throat kind of coffee. So Ashley, if you are not going to be delivering any testlets, you do not need to complete the training, if that's helpful. All right, Terrlyn. So yeah, so I think it's really good to complete it and see what your teachers see. But you're not required as district to complete it. So Tiffany, I suggest if you are going to complete the training to do it under that facilitator training course. Yeah, and Melanie, thank you. Yeah, if there's an emergency, and that happens. I get the calls every year. We've got a teacher that's gone out and we've got to send somebody in, district wide. Yep, good. Okay. All right. So that is our training. And so just some information about what you get in that. Were you guys able to get in and see that training course? Should the course open when I select the link? It should. Okay, so Sandy, you're not seeing that. Will you shoot me an email, Sandy, so we can look on the back end and call DLM if we need to get that assigned to you? Perfect. Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right. Okay, educator portal account. So let's dig in to that. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Tiffany. I see that. Okay, educator portal accounts. So let's talk about how students get enrolled into DLM. So we use what is called an API or a one roster nightly manual upload that happens. So or you folks cannot manually add students into DLM. So what happens is when the IEP team determines that the student qualifies and will participate in DLM, there's what we call a 1% flag that is set in your SIS systems for the student. And that usually that lives in the SCRAM record, which is the student special education record. So one, they have to have that record coming through and that 1% flag needs to be set to true. What happens is then that flows from your SIS system through Utrex into us, and that's how we pick up and know which students need to go to the DLM system and not Rise or Utah Spire Plus. Um, so that's how students get in. It can take anywhere from 3 to 5 business days, depending on how often or when you transfer and send your information from your SIS system to DLM. DLM reaches in to USBE at 9 p.m. every night to pull the new data. So if you are a district that sends your data loads to USBE after 9 p.m., odds are it's going to take the next night for that to pick up from DLM. So it can take a couple days for students to get in. And so if you are seeing students that you're missing, give it a good 3 to 5 days for that to come into play. Double check that you don't have a fatal error on that student record. Sometimes students will have a fatal error on their Scrum record for some other information that may not be correct. And so give it a couple days, and if not, then shoot Maureen and myself an email and we can dig on the back end and see what may be happening. And the only thing we ever need on a student is just an SSID. So never please send student names to DLM. So that's how we get students in. We've got students enrolling now. So if you're submitting those Scrum records with that 1% flag, they're getting picked up and enrolled into DLM now. So as far as creating teacher accounts and rosters, that onus sits on you folks at the district level. We do not do that. So there is on that district Padlet under the TA document column, there is a technical assistance document available to you that walks you through what the expectations are and how to create a teacher account and then how to set up rosters. But we are going to walk through that today. So when creating teacher accounts or any account, you need the first name and the last name, and then please use that school email address. We really don't want to be entering accounts with personal Gmails or things like that. It should be the school. Please do not enter a teacher account without that Cactus ID as the educator identifier. And sometimes district folks may have that or not have that, but we really want that Cactus ID before we enter any sort of user account, because what that does is that helps us from creating duplicate accounts. And so when we have folks that go in and just add a teacher without that Cactus ID, or if they don't know it, they'll just put something in there as a placeholder, we create duplicate accounts, which means that then we on the back end have to go in and fix that. If there is a teacher that already has an account, so for example, they were with one district one year and they've moved to another, when you go to enter that, you'll get an error message that pops up that says user already has an existing account. You need to email myself or Maureen. We're the only ones that can move that. So the other district can't switch that teacher over. That happens with myself and Maureen. So we can go find that teacher. And again, that's where that Cactus ID becomes really important. We can pull that up and move those teachers over to you. Okay, deactivating or removing teacher accounts. So we do suggest that you come in and look at cleaning up accounts. So you have this option to deactivate or remove a user. You would click on the teacher's name and you click on the box that says active here and highlight them. And then what you would do is, let's say, for example, you've got a teacher that doesn't need DLM this year. They had students last year. They don't have it this year. So you can go ahead and deactivate them. Their account stays there. You can still see it. And then that way, if at any point you need to reactivate it, you can. If you have a teacher that has left the district and moved, go ahead and you can remove that teacher. It just removes them from your filtering on your end. But Maureen and myself, like a user never actually completely deletes out of DLM, but we can always pick them up on our end and reactivate a teacher if needs be. Okay, So let's get in to Educator Portal and look at creating a teacher account. Okay, I'm gonna log into a sandbox account here so we can play. Okay, so creating a teacher account, when you log into Educator Portal,
Hey, Tracy,
what? Yeah,
just
go ahead.
just real quick, if a teacher has moved from one school to the other, are we able to do that, or is that something that you have to do as well?
Nope, you should be able to move them. That's a great question, JR.
Awesome.
Nope, the only way, the only thing that we need to do is, and sometimes that's happened where if you've removed a teacher by chance, and you can't find them, like if they're removed, you don't see them. Does that make sense? Or if they've moved districts. But you can actually, as long as you can see that teacher and they're within your district, you can move them schools. You can also have a teacher or a user that has multiple schools assigned to them. And sometimes that happens where we've got teachers that need to be in various locations. We can also assign a teacher multiple districts if need be. But great question. So when you go into settings and you click on users, it's going to pop this up. So one of the things with DLM is you'll notice that it will automatically populate your district for you. And then if you're a charter school and you only have one location, it might populate the school. Otherwise, you can click on that drop-down menu and see all your schools. So you can come in and click search and see all of your users in your entire district or charter school if you have multiple locations. Or you can just select a specific school and see. You also have this button to include inactive users. So if you do have those teachers that you have inactivated because they haven't needed an account and now they need it, you can click on this button and click search, and it will pull in all of your inactive teachers also. So if you have a teacher that's inactive, you can just click on the button and it'll give you the status here inactive and click activate here, and it will reactivate those teachers, and then you need to send them a new activation email to redo their account. Um, so if you have any of those inactive teachers, sometimes if you've created an account and as soon as you create a new user, it automatically sends them an activation email. But if they don't go in and activate that within a certain time period, you may have to come back and resend them an activation email. So a lot of times that'll happen as we get closer to the window. Teachers or users have been added at the beginning of the school year and they didn't do anything with it, and so they need to be reactivated to get in. Okay, so to add a user, it really is quite simple. We just add our first name, last name, and their school email address, and then that educator identifier. So that's where that cactus number comes in. We do in Utah allow a proctor role. So if you have a paraeducator or you have a teacher, especially our online schools, if you have a teacher that needs a teacher role plus maybe a proctor role, you can add that. But if you're just adding a paraeducator as a proctor, instead of an educator identifier, you're just going to copy and paste their email address into their educator identifier, and that's how we know that they're a proctor and not a licensed teacher. Does that make sense? So you can add paraeducators. The key to that is when you add just a proctor role to a school, they see all the kids in that school. So we can't assign just specific students to them. So think about that as you're navigating that. But you would just add their Cactus ID number, and then our assessment program is DLM, and then whatever role it is that you're giving them, you can assign anybody a role that is below you as a district test coordinator. So a district test coordinator role is the highest level role that you can have underneath a state level. So if you do need someone else in your district with a district test coordinator role, you have to email Maureen and I, and we add those or remove those roles, but you can assign any other role underneath you. Does that make sense? So we click on teacher and then the district, and some of this may pre-populate for you. And then you just choose your school and click add. Okay, once you see that, so you may have teachers or folks with multiple roles. You do have to set a default role on them. If you have multiple roles, and you need to let those teachers or folks know that their default role is what, when they first log in, is the first role that they set. And to change their role, you can click on this button up here if they have multiple roles or if they're assigned to multiple schools. That's how they navigate through that. So you have to have a default role and then you just click save. Oh, why did it reset that? Sometimes a sandbox account is kind of funky. So then you would just click save. And if a teacher is already there, it'll pop up. That's where it'll pop up the window. So when you click save, I don't know if the sandbox account lets me actually add users, but when you click save, if they've added successfully, you'll see a message that comes across the screen here that says user added successfully. Or if they already have an account, that's where it'll pop up that message. They already have an account. And then that's when you have to contact Maureen and I to move them. Okay, does that make sense? So for example, JR, let's say we wanted to move Gregory Bates here to a different school. So when I go to my view users, right, and click search, I can highlight them and click on edit. And then it pops up here. And then what I can do is set their role and their district. And right now he's at school 25 and I can change him to 26 and click add. And then what I would do to change them, if they no longer need access to this school 25, I would click this as my default and then delete the school that they no longer need access to and then click save. Does that make sense?
Yep, thank you.
Perfect. Okay. You can try to do an upload users if you need to. The system won't allow me to do that. So if you are doing any sort of uploads, when you click on that tab, you click on this question mark here and there's the template for you and you can try uploading that way. Sometimes it's just easier to add them manually, but that's how you add teachers. Okay, any questions with that? Okay, let's talk about rosters really quickly. So you are responsible for creating rosters. So these are the roles in your district that can create rosters. You can assign folks a district user role. You can also assign folks if you want to put any of the onus on to like a building coordinator. They can create rosters. What we ask for in rosters is when you create that roster name, and we're going to go in and demo that in just a second. We do ask that the roster name is labeled as the student's last name, the organization number, and then ELA, math, or science. And why the organization number is so important is you have to have a unique roster name for every teacher. So for example, if you have a teacher that may need to test in multiple schools, which I know we do have, or for example, you have that emergency situation and you have a teacher go out and you need this teacher in this building now to go in and help administer. If you just use a teacher's last name and then ELA or math, you could not create multiple multiple rosters for that teacher. Does that make sense? So we do ask that you do that organization number. So really what we would want it to look like is that GULI 99101 and then ELA or math or science behind it. So that's the uniqueness in what we're looking for rosters. Okay. So, and then we're going to walk you through where to find that organization number in that roster. So let's go back to Educator Portal. Okay, so if I need to know what is my org number, if you are a charter school with just one location, you really only have one org number, but you click on settings, go to org, and it drops you over. So if I'm a larger district or I have multiple locations, if I click search, it will drop in all my orgs underneath me. So the first one you'll see here is that district level org, and then you'll see your schools underneath. So that org number that we're looking for is over here. So, and it's all numbers because your district number, your districts will have numbers and then your schools have numbers. So that's what we're looking for is that org number here. Okay, so to create a roster, if I manually want to create a roster, hold on, I gotta go find a user real quick. So let's go create a roster in school 25. Let's go create a roster for Ricky Bowen. So I'm going to go back to rosters. Okay, when I click on create a roster, I do my teacher's last name and then my org number, which was like whatever it was, YESH25. Yours will be all numbers, and then I'm going to do ELA. My little trick here is I do a control copy on that. Okay, then I choose my subject, English Language Arts. You don't need anything for course, leave that blank. And then I'm going to select my school if I have multiples, and then I click search. Now my students that are in that school load in, and then I can select my educator here. So then I go through and I find my educator, and we're assigning them to Ricky Bowen. And then I can come in and say, these are the students that need to go to Ricky. Let's say, for example, I need this student too. And then I go click save. If you have a student that is already on another teacher's roster, it's going to pop up this like warning sign for you, like, hey, this student's already rostered in this subject. Someone else, are you sure you want to roster them there? So it's just kind of a warning. You can click yes or no. Oops, maybe I clicked on the wrong student. So then once I've done that, I've now created the ELA roster, successfully created. And then what I do is I just can paste in ELA and plug in math, go find math and my school, find my teacher, and maybe for math, my teacher doesn't need this student. Sometimes you may have teachers that split students. And so we're going to go assign these kiddos and click save. And then so forth, you can do the same thing for science. I can only roster a student to one teacher per subject. Does that make sense? So I cannot give two teachers the same student for ELA or math, but I can split those. We can have one teacher that does ELA, one teacher that does math. If you're in a space where you've got teachers sharing kids, or online schools where you may be going out remotely and testing, and this teacher's going out this day to test kids, this teacher's going out the next day, that's where having that dual role of a proctor can be helpful, because that proctor gets into all the test information stuff, but I can only roster the student to one teacher per subject. Then I select my teacher and students. Okay. So when you go to create science rosters, you will not see your third grade students there. So if I go back to view rosters, I should now see, there we go, Ricky's rosters completed. Okay, So any questions on manually creating rosters? And then Ashley, did that answer your question on where to find that org number? I hope. Okay, perfect. You can come in and do an upload. So again, you'll find that upload template when you click on the upload, and you can click here and it will download the roster upload template for you. One nice thing, and there's your roster template with all of the information that you need to submit. Okay. Um, One nice thing that DLM has created for us is they went ahead and they have redone all of their template formats so that all of the headers now, they may not be in the exact same column, but all the header names in all of our templates and data extracts are the same. So if you want to come in and create a template and do an upload that way, you can come in and just copy and paste your rows into your rostering template. So that hopefully will be much easier. And so what you need to do is if you want to do an upload, if you have tons of schools that you're trying to create rosters, you come in and you just will fill out this template with all the appropriate information that is needed. You leave the course blank and then leave your local student identifier blank. And if they don't have a legal middle name, like that was added for some states, you can add that. You don't have to add that. You can leave that one blank too. And then you fill out everything in the template and go ahead and upload that way. So I do suggest, because the student information and the teacher information in that roster upload template has to match exactly what is in Educator Portal already. So we do suggest using the user extract to get the teacher information and using your current enrollment. That's your student information. And then you can come in and copy and paste those columns. Does that make sense? Because if it doesn't match exactly, it could throw an error on that upload. Okay, so under the data management manual, there is managing roster data and there is create a roster upload template file section starting on page 136 to walk you through if that's one way you want to go about creating rosters. Okay, any questions about rosters? Okay, perfect. Okay, so kind of reviewing DLM accounts. So you guys create teacher accounts, you create the rosters. Students need that 1% flag set in order for them to go into DLM. And then a reminder that your teachers have to complete that required training. And then the first contact surveys, and then what we call P&P settings for students before they complete any testing, whether engaging in those instructionally embedded or the spring testlets. The P&P settings would be like, think about those accommodation components that a student needs. If they need a color contrast adjustment, magnification, they can set like spoken audio or text to speech, and all kinds of different accessibility features is in that P&P settings. If a teacher has the first contact survey and a P&P setting completed on students before March 9th, when that window opens on March 9th, testlets will be delivered down into the system for them. Once the window opens, and if a teacher, like you have a move-in that happens, or a teacher doesn't complete that first contact survey before March 9th, once they complete that first contact survey, it can take 24 hours for the system to pick up overnight that information to deliver testlets. So a teacher cannot fill this out in the morning and have testlets in the afternoon. They have to wait to the very next day. P&P settings. Once the window opens, let's say a teacher has set some color contrast or magnification or whatever setting they put in there and it doesn't work well for the student, they can go in and change those accommodations or P&P settings throughout the window. Again, once you make that change, give the system overnight to pick up and it'll re-deliver that testlet with those changes made. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, Kite Student Portal. So this is our secure testing browser that needs to be updated and pushed out to any student devices. So you can find that on the DLM. I kind of call it our DLM homepage. And again, I will post these slides on the Padlet that you can access after the training today. But that Kite Suite, when you click on that on the DLM page, it walks you through how to get to that secure browser to download and push out to student machines. I do advise or suggest that it doesn't hurt to push out the secure browser to teacher computers as well, in case they want to engage in some practice testlets or things like that. It doesn't hurt to have teacher computers to have that student portal as well. Okay, we are going to dig in to DLM score reports here. Do we need to take a break? We've been at it for about an hour. Does anybody need a 5-minute break or keep moving forward? Keep going. There we go. I got one. All right. Okay, DLM score reports. So let's look and see what we have going on here. So there is a host of score reports that deliver down in DLM for you guys as district people. You get a district aggregate, a school aggregate, class aggregate, student individual score reports, or what we call student bundled, where they all of your individual student score reports come down in one big bundled, and then archived reports. So you have a host of things that you can look at the district level. Teachers can go in and access individual student score reports once students are rostered to them. So once they have students rostered, they can go in and find previous years or any score report that a student has, all the way back to 2016 when we started doing DLM testing, and maybe even further back than that. So, but teachers don't get access to those until they're rostered. DLM score reports will deliver down to Educator Portal by the beginning of August every single year. They usually come in at the tail end of July, but they are down and delivered to district folks for you to have. So we do have a requirement that we get score reports out to parents within 3 weeks of receiving them. So what I do suggest is ensuring that our teachers, if they don't have rosters created, you at the district level need to figure out how do we get score reports into teachers' hands, at least by the first parent-teacher conference, or by a first IEP meeting, because they can be very helpful for IEP teams. So just make sure that you guys have worked out some way to get DLM score reports into teachers' hands at the fall of every year. Okay, so where we find some score reports, we have individual. Oh, let's go in and look at that. We're going to go play. Oops. Okay, let's go back in to Educator Portal and find score reports. So as a district test coordinator, you should see this reports tab. If you click on this, you should be able to see the student report archive. You can go in and click here and plug in an individual student name or SSID and see any score report that's come in that they've ever had. They don't load score reports in my Sandbox account here. You've got these alternate assessment reports. So what you see here is on your end of year reports. This is where you'll find some individual, those student score reports done individually, bundled. Here's your district aggregates, school aggregates, and class aggregates. So teachers should have access to a class aggregate as well. So you can come in and pull these reports, select your year. I don't think they load anything in here. Not available, but you can select the year that you want to look at in the school, and pull up a PDF report to give you kind of that high level look. If you have any instructionally embedded testing or those benchmarks going on, you should be able to get in and have access to see that as well. Okay, data extracts. So let's look at what you get for data extracts. So when you click on data extracts, you have this student information tab. So when I had talked about if you wanted to do manual uploads, and we talked about using some of those extracts to create that, here's where you'd come in and pull that information, is under reports and data extracts. So you get a current enrollment. So you can go in right now and click on new file, and you can go look at what is my current enrollment for students, what students are coming into the schools, or you can do it by district. You can leave it blank and it'll do it by the entire district, and click yes, we want to proceed, and it'll pull in a CVS file for you. So same thing, if I want to look at rosters or PNP settings, first contact survey, which students have this completed, not completed. I think this extract is the nicest one that they've done in the last couple years. And especially as you're getting closer to that testing window, I can come in and click on new file, and I can, if I leave this as just selected, that will give me my entire district, and click OK. And this CVS file will pull in for me. Wait for it to queue. And it'll show me which students are rostered and also which students have that first contact survey completed. So this is a great monitoring extract to use to pinpoint, which teachers haven't completed that first contact survey, or do I have any students in here that haven't been rostered? So it comes down in an Excel sheet, and you can see here, right, here's my students, first contact survey, who's the educator, like if they're not rostered, who's the educator they're assigned to for the different subjects. And so then you can come in and add filters, right, and get to that information a little bit more quickly, right? Which students, aren't rostered and who hasn't completed a first contact survey. So this is a really handy monitoring extract to use and look at. Okay, so those are the different extracts that you get there. Okay, let's go look at test administration and monitoring. So the two extracts that you get here, in here, someone tell me they don't set up my sandbox the same as you. Do you also see a special circumstance line here? Special circumstance codes, I believe.
Yes.
I see a thumbs up. Okay, thank you. So that one is where you can go in and monitor, right? Have which students have I entered special circumstance codes on, which ones I haven't. I would recommend downloading all of these extracts at the end of every school year, by the way, so you can save that data. So like when your data comes through that like I did set, like these special circumstance codes or non-participation codes were set. This is also how you can help use monitoring, like what's going on with your progress. This one, so same thing, you click new file, you can set it. But you can actually come in if you have assigned instructionally embedded assessments, or you're a district that you want your teachers using this, you've trained on it. You can come in and look. So not only do you get the information on your end of year testing, right? Have they completed field tests? How many were required? How many have they completed? What's in progress or not started? But you also get the instructionally embedded. So if you're curious if any of your teachers are using it, we've had we've got a couple hundred students across the state so far this year as of, gosh, when was that, Maureen? Last week or the week before, that have actually taken instructionally embedded. So we have teachers using this. So you can come in and see, right, what are your teachers doing? Has anybody used instructionally embedded or not? So this is a really good monitoring component that you can pull by school, by district, right, and come in and filter and see what's going on. So when I come to you in the spring window and start providing you data on like how many tests have been completed, how many we still don't have, I use this extract at the state level to do that. Okay, test information page. So it is required. Teachers should be clicking on what is called this test information page and reviewing this prior to administering a testlet. We have started monitoring this at the state level, and we are asking you folks at the district to do this as well. Because what this test information page does is it provides teachers the information that they need prior to testing. That if a student receives that lower linkage level or access point, it actually may not be a computer-based testlet for the kiddo. It may actually be what we call a teacher administered because it's at that like lowest access point for students. And what that testlet looks like and how that is being delivered to students is there's actually materials, outside materials that teachers need to gather. And then they engage in some scripted directions on working with that student. So that student is actually testing outside of the system and engaging with hands-on materials with the teacher. The teacher is then recording that information. They still log in under the student portal under that student, and that's where they get their scripting and their directions of what they're doing and the questions that they ask and the student, and they mark their observations in there and submit that. And so when we have teachers that are administering or students that get what we call an initial precursor testlet, that's that very low access point, if they're not accessing this TIPS access page, then they're going into that testlet blind. They're opening up a student's testlet without having any of the information available. So this extract and monitoring this TIP access, it's actually click data. So they're not required to save the TIPS page or download it, but they really should be clicking on that for every single test session. And it tells the teacher like what linkage level the student is getting delivered a testlet. It tells them what essential element is being tested and all that information. So what you get in this test information page is you see for each student every single test session that's been delivered and accessed and whether or not they clicked on that TIP access. So if it's a complete testlet, for example, here's a great example. So it's saying that the testlet status is complete. So a testlet was delivered to this student. It was completed, but the user, like there was no access date or email on that. So that's how we can monitor whether teachers are accessing that. And especially if we have what you see, this IP, that's our linkage level. So here's the standard that testlet was at, and here's that access point. That's really problematic if we have teachers not actually clicking on that test information page and gathering that information before sitting down and testing with students. So we are monitoring this, and we do ask that you monitor as well, and I do address this in training with teachers. Okay, so any questions on this?
So on the teacher training, that's through Midas as well, correct? On the 65632.
Yep, so
And
that's the
that'll be covered on that as well.
Yep, and it actually is covered also in the required training through DLM, they talk about the requirement to access the tips page. And actually, in the quizzes, I think there's like 3 or 4 questions throughout the different modules and quizzes that they take that talk about the importance of the tips page. So teachers are, um, if they have missed that I didn't know I was supposed to do that, they have not been paying attention in multiple ways, if that makes sense, JR. So we do look at that. So it is important, yeah. And again, that Midas course training number, which is me facilitating training, teachers aren't required to attend that. They can, but they do mention it in all the DLM required training that all teachers take. Okay, so under the data management tab, so you also get access to security agreement, training status, and then here's your users. So you can come in and see all of your users in here, who's active, not active, and what roles they have. Are you guys seeing something more than these 3? Or is that the same? Are you seeing the same 3? I think the test administration tab is the only one that I'm missing info in my sandbox account. Okay, so the security agreement, so same 3. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Chandra. So the security agreement, that's the thing that pops up every year when you re-log into DLM. They have to click on that as security agreement. So that can be a stopping block to accessing testlets and then training status. So this is really good as we're moving closer into the window to kind of start monitoring which teachers um, have completed their training, what were they assigned. And so you can see here, like, did they complete it? If they didn't, it'll say a no here, were they assigned new or returning? So you can start monitoring that. And I use the SACstruct too when I start giving that information to you when the assessment window opens. So just another way for you to monitor your teacher's activity. Okay, so I think that sums up. Okay, I'm going to talk to you through reading through an individual score report and what it means, and how teachers can use it. And this is the same information that I give to your teachers in training. So if you want to follow along with a score report, you should be able to click on alternate assessment reports. And you can do it a couple ways. Go to year end. You can pull up an individual student or bundled, or go in and click on students, find an active student in there, and go to student report archive and plug in their last name or SSID. I think it's helpful to follow along with an actual score report, but you can just watch the PowerPoint slides too. But we have spent the last couple years really digging in with teachers. How do I read a score report? What does this mean? And then how can I help it drive IEP conversations, setting IEP goals, and looking at all that instructional stuff that goes on in the classroom. So in an individual student score report, what teachers get is they will get an overall performance for each subject, and they'll get a score report for ELA, math, and science. If you've pulled up an active score report and are following along, I would suggest an ELA or math one is a little bit more robust. They also then get the student-specific skills that the student mastered, which is called a learning profile. And then they get just kind of a high-level overall mastery of our conceptual areas, which would be like a domain or a strand in our core standards. So let's dig into this. So the first thing that they get in their score report is they'll see this overall results. So my example report here was a grade 10 mathematics. And the first thing you see here is it tells me that it allowed my student to show achievement or mastery amongst 40 skills. And then it tells me the number of essential elements that the student tested on. So my 10th grade math student was tested on 8 of our essential elements and had the opportunity to master 40 skills. Then it gives me that quantitative data. My student actually mastered last year 8 out of those 40 skills. So if we just take 80 divided by 40, right? If that's our total number of skills, right? Or points in essence that we could master, 8 divided by 40, I think comes out to like 20%. So now I have some of that quantitative data that I can use as an IEP team in a present level of academic and functional performance or a PLAFA. But so now my student mastered 8 out of 40 skills. The next thing it does is it tells me what is their overall proficiency level or proficiency bucket, I like to call them. And so we have emerging, approaching target, at target, and advanced are our 4 buckets. And those are very similar and correlate to exactly what we do for our proficiency levels or buckets for RISE and Utah Aspire Plus. So emerging is a proficiency 1, approaching the target is a proficiency 2, at target is proficiency 3, and advanced is proficiency 4. So in Utah, we draw the line at saying a student is proficient or was proficient in the last year's standards at a 3 or a 4. So those are in alignment and exactly the same as what we do for RISE and Utah Aspire Plus. Okay, so then the next thing we get in a score report is what we call this report, like this score report area. So these are what we call our conceptual areas and claims in DLM. So those are those really high level, almost strand like areas where our students, no matter their grade level, will have specific essential elements or those alternate standards within these domains or claim areas. And so, for example, here it will show me this one was that my student in math claim 3, conceptual area 1, understand and use measurement principles and units of measure, they mastered 0 out of 5 skills. So there were 5 linkage levels or skills that were assessed in this claim. They mastered 3 out of 10 in represent and interpret data displays, 1 out of 5 over here in use operations and models to solve problems, and 3 out of 10 in understand patterns and functional thinking. So how this can be beneficial to IEP teams or to the teacher is last year, right, they were tested on different essential elements. This year, they have different essential elements at a grade level, unless it's a grade banded component in science. But what this does is this can help me pinpoint where I may want to determine to set an IEP goal or that specially designed instruction for our kiddos. Because if they mastered 3 out of 10 here, we've got some skills that we've learned, but I have 0 out of 5 here or 1 out of 5. So I may want to take that intensive instruction that I'm doing for these kiddos and find an essential element in this grade level that fits under this conceptual area and claim, understand, and use measurement principles. And that may be where I want to look at setting an IEP goal. So this can be really helpful in that high level component for teachers there. And then what they get is what's called this learning profile. And so next through a score report, they actually get to see now here were all of the essential elements that my student did test on. And then they see this 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So ELA and math have these 5 levels here. These are our access points or what we call linkage levels in DLM. So science, you'll only see 3. Moving forward in the new standards, we get 4 starting next year. But these are your learning progression, if you will, or the different levels in which students can access into this standard. So target is our actual essential element. And then you notice we backwards chain, right, those skills or that complexity of what we're asking students to do. So it will tell us for this essential element that was tested, if it's a green box that the student mastered it, or if it's blue, like they didn't master any of those skills. So your learning profile could look completely different on every single kiddo. The way DLM adds up those skills or points or what they do for looking at scoring is if we have five linkage levels in ELA and math, if you go back to this first page, remember we had the opportunity to show achievement in 40 skills. So 8 essential elements, there's five linkage levels. 8 times 5 is 40. So that's where they get that skill component. So meaning they had the opportunity to show mastery in all these areas. The way DLM determines this is if you have a student that may be at a target or a distal precursor. This is initial, distal, precursor, proximal, target, and then advanced are the linkage levels that they call them. So you may have a student that received testlets in this 3 or 4 at a proximal or target precursor, or this example here is at distal. A student, if you notice, is a green box here. So they get a point. If they've mastered at this linkage level, it's assumed that they can do this skill too. That's back to that learning progression. So they can actually earn points at these lower linkage levels and may have never actually seen a testlet at that level. So when we talk to teachers and I do training about using essential elements and how do we map out instruction, it actually doesn't do us any justice or our kiddos if we take only 1 or 2 standards and spend our entire year trying to get them to the target level. Because if at any point we can gain mastery at any of these skills along the way, the more essential elements, right, we can gain a mastery skill, even if it's all in this initial precursor level, will actually help our students actually gain a greater proficiency. So then when we determine what are our cut points for our 4 buckets, there is a document that sits on both the Padlet for teachers and the Padlet for you under the score report column. A document that I've created that outlines all of our cut points. So I'm going to go back to math. So my 10th grade math. So now we can see at the various grade level, and you'll notice it doesn't matter how many essential elements they're tested and what their total linkage level is, those cut points that determine our 3 proficiency levels, emerging, approaching target, at target, and advanced, are all different depending on the grade level. And again, we set cut points using actual student data. So that's why that field testing is so important and why I encourage our students to actually use the new science standards this year is because when we take all those field testlets and we look at doing our standard setting and setting cut points, we use actual data. So you'll notice here that for grade 10, this is where it gets teachers when we explain this. So at grade 10, in order for a student to be proficient, right, that at target and advanced, these are our levels 3 and 4. A student had to have mastered 19 skills, which if you take 19 divided by 40 actually comes out to 47.5%. So when we determine proficient, it varies upon the grade level, and that proficiency level is not set as high, I think, as what teachers often think. So this is a great resource for teachers. And it's really cool when I do this in training with teachers to see them pull up score reports and start looking at this. And usually there's 1 or 2 that's like, oh man, we were 1 point away from being proficient or 2 points away. So that's valuable information to the teachers and also for parents, right? Are we making progress? Are we gaining skills as we move forward? So those cut points for science, these will change again after next year, but you'll see those cut points for English language arts, math, and science. So that's how we determine those proficiency levels and what that means. Okay, any questions about looking at score reports? Teachers have really loved this. I think it's a valuable component to training. Okay, there are various DLM score report resources There's a whole video that walks through score reports for teachers. And then there's also an interpretive guide in English and Spanish available that your teachers can go ahead and give to parents when they hand over a DLM score report. And then there's also this resource for teachers that walks them through, like, how do we talk to parents about DLM score reports? Because if we just hand over a score report and don't give any additional information to parents, it could be very confusing. So there's multiple resources. Okay, perfect. Okay, Ashley, I know last year there was a discussion about having too many kids listed as 1% students. When looking at the reports, is there any indicators that a student shouldn't be listed as 1%? So, Ashley, that's a great question. I get this from teachers all the time. If I have students that are at target or advanced, should that mean that maybe they shouldn't take DLM? So the question could be maybe, back to that typical IEP conversation. Everything's a depends and maybe. The conversation that the IEP team should have is if in this learning profile, especially if students are at that target, a level 4 or a 3 or a 4, and they open up this learning profile and your green boxes, meaning their level of mastery, is sitting all within this at target and successor, then the conversation that the team should be having is, could my student now access our core standards and show progress and measurable gains? Because it's meaning we've mastered these skills, right? And especially for ELA and math, this successor would be that bridge. If we can do this skill, we most likely can access into, right? And an initial level into our gen ed standards. So the cool part about what DLM has done is they, between their linkage levels, and then any of you that are familiar or have worked with your teachers, they then produce a mini map, which also then takes all of those skills and breaks them out even more. DLM has really provided that information for teachers. So food for thought in your district proficiency scales could be something that teachers can use. The student may not be a 3 or 4 in a RISE assessment, but could they access that core and show progress and measurable gains? And Melanie, thank you. Yeah, we've used this to have these conversations with parents. And the answer may be yes, the answer may be no. I mean, the question could be, maybe do we try doing a resource or a gen ed class with some support and see how they do? So that's a great question. There's not a hard yes or no on that, though. I'm sorry, one more. A student is either 1% or not correct. They can't be 1% for, yes, that is correct, Ashley. So when an IEP team determines that a student is a student with the most significant cognitive disabilities, because of that, they require that instructional support in our essential elements to show progress and measurable gains, and therefore they take an alternate assessment. Typically, when we're talking about these kids, right, if you have the most significant cognitive disability, it's all or nothing. Good questions. Okay, so just kind of some recap on our data extracts, which we went in and looked at all of those. Oh, this one, I did not show you this one. So you have also, I don't get it in my sandbox. You have a data extract in the end of year that is your general research file, your GRF. So let's go back, jump back in. I'm gonna sign out of my demo account and jump back in here. Is Brett on here still? Did I lose Brett? Brett, I added myself as a district test coordinator to Wasatch, so I hope you don't mind. In reports, let's see where it's at. Is it this one? No. Go to data X. Is it data extracts? Hold on, I gotta find it. Yes, okay. Go to reports and click on data extracts. And you should see this additional tab, end of year. Do you guys see that in there? You click on that and you'll see this. You will have what is called a GRF file. So this is all of your last year's student data. I'm not going to open it and click on it because it's kids, but you can open this file and here's a crosswalk for you. You get the all of your students that tested. You get the proficiency level, you get all of the essential elements and where they're at. So this is a really good data file for your data folks, and especially if you are a district that loads scores into like a portal or some sort of thing. Is there anybody on here that's accessed this in previous years and uses it that wants to jump in? Um, this is one that go in and download this file for sure this year. So this is all of your last year scores, and it's a big spreadsheet CVS file that gives you all of your testing information for all your students. And then it's worth downloading this data detail essential elements. Oh, I just broke it. You get this data detail and then an essential elements crosswalk if needed. Currently have access, but would need to download again to see. Yeah. So I didn't know if anybody has used that. I know some have, but you also get that. So this is your comprehensive file. So in fact, we get a state level GRF, and that's what we use to load all of our accountability stuff. Okay. So the data extracts that are important before testing is looking at that security agreement, training status as we're approaching that March 9th window. And then looking at student rosters, first contact survey, and P&P settings is some good stuff. Are students all ready to go? Have teachers done what they're supposed to do? During testing, you have that test administration monitoring component. It's important to note that when a student completes one testlet, they are actually considered a participant. I just pulled it again and it only had 10th graders on it. Melanie, shoot me an email and we'll have to look into that. That's interesting. Okay, so one testlet and they are considered a participant. They will receive a score report. One testlet, they may have seen 3 items. That score report is not going to be valid or reliable, but they are considered a participant. So if you have students that don't get all the way through testing, but they've completed one testlet, you do not need to enter any special circumstance codes. You've got your tips access page, and there is that on-demand special circumstance file. Okay, we have some dashboards available to you as well. So these were new, starting the last year or two. So in Educator Portal, you should see this dashboard here. And the different things that you get on it is you can come in and filter down into a school, grade level, district level, and look at your progress of where you're at for first contact survey being completed on students. So this is a new one. I pulled this yesterday. So you can see where we're at state level. So we have quite a few kids that teachers have completed that first contact survey. In progress means there's some information filled out, but it's not submitted yet, not started. They haven't done anything with it. And then this ready to submit. So it's important to remember first contact survey information as well as P&P information actually stays in the student and follows them year to year. So if a student took DLM last year, they will have this first contact survey will be in a ready to submit, meaning there's information in that. The teacher needs to come in and review it and complete it. So that completed status is what you're looking for. Okay, testing progress. There we go. Let's look at this. Testing progress. So in this window, I couldn't pull anything. It didn't have anything. But as we move about into this spring window, you can come in and again, select by a school, grade. You do have to select by subject. So this will come up in like a ELA, math or science, but you can actually, you'll get a graph or a pie chart around your testing progress for your subjects. You also get this testing outside hours. So this is important. So we do need you guys to be monitoring this. We also monitor this one as well, and you may be hearing from us. We have set our testing hours to be 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., which we probably most likely won't have any children testing at 6 a.m. or after 5 p.m. But those are the testing hours we've set Monday through Friday. So if at any point we have testlets that get opened outside of those testing hours, this will show up in this testing outside hours grid here. You can look at today, prior day, and all school year. You can download it in an extract, but it will give you all of the information around what is going on for your testing outside of hours. So it'll tell you when the testlet was started, the student, right, when the testlet was ended, and the test end reason. So the reasons that will report for testing outside of hours will be an exit does not save, which means that the testlet was opened and the exit does not save button was clicked. And so the testlet was exited and resets. Or you have submitted, meaning the testlet was opened and it was completed and submitted. Other could be for some other reason that doesn't fit into any of these. And then you'll see that test reset. If you see test reset and you see a timestamp typically within a couple minutes or around that 11 p.m., that is DLM setting their test resets. So I wouldn't worry about that as much. If for some reason there was a power outage or a computer was shut off or something funky happened, you'll see this test reset come in. So I wouldn't pay attention to that as much. If you see this exit does not save and especially submit or others, you need to do some investigating why we had testlets opened up. We have districts have used this to find misadministration with teachers, as in opening student testlets at home after hours on the weekend and submitting them. So we are monitoring that, and that is something that we do ask you to monitor. If you find that there's an anomaly or there's an investigation or something's funky, please reach out to us and let us know what's going on and investigate that.
Tracy, can I ask a question?
You sure can.
So we have a couple of homebound students where the parents may be requesting that the proctor come and deliver that after 5. Is that a no-no, or is that something we should just let you know?
You can. So it doesn't shut down. The system doesn't shut down. So they can go do that, but you would be able to account for that, right?
Okay. Right.
So if for some reason, because I'll look at this too. So if I say, hey, Tooele, you've had this, and if you can account for it, great.
Okay.
If you go, why is Sally having testlets submitted on a Saturday?
Yeah.
Or at 9 p.m. So we kind of leave that to you, right? We do look at that. You may hear from me. And if it's a viable reason, then great, we move on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great question. Okay, short duration. This is an interesting one. So you should also look at that, and we kind of monitor it too. So if a testlet was opened and submitted in a duration, I want to say it's under a minute that it tags this, that might be something to investigate too. And especially if you see a lot of it, right? What is happening? So even if we have students that are not engaging or they're at that lowest level, if we're completing testlets in 15 seconds, are we actually appropriately engaging in the test with fidelity with that student? So again, it just requires some investigation. So there's been some interesting things that have come about across the state since these two monitoring components have come into play. So again, just further investigation, and if something makes sense, then it makes sense. If it doesn't, then we gotta investigate it and figure out what we're doing. Okay, so those are some of those just really quick high-level dashboard. Okay, you guys, you ready? This is the best news yet. Special circumstance codes. DLM has taken feedback and they've made adjustments. Guess what? You now can set a special circumstance code like your parent opt-outs at the student level now. You can set it at a subject level. You can set it at the test session level, which is the old way. So DLM has heard us. I still need to finish updating this special circumstance codes TA document with screenshots for all this. So assessment directors will be notified when that's done. But here's the cool thing. You now, when you log into settings and you go to the students, you will see a tab now that says special circumstance codes. Our students that need special circumstance codes set, like parental opt-out for one, those students no longer have to be added to a roster and we don't have to submit that first contact survey anymore. You can come in and you can set it now. So at the student level, it is opened and available before our window opens or anytime. You can also change that too. I know, right, Melanie? What? No first contact survey needed. If you've got that parent opt out, removing that student from the teacher roster will also help ensure that the student doesn't get assessed. So if you're doing it at the student level, you can go in and do that now, and you don't have to roster the student, first contact survey, or any of that. So that is amazing. We have also allowed you to do it at subject level in case you need. In case you've got a parent that's opted out of just one subject or another, you can click on special circumstances and you just will toggle between this little tab here, student or subject, to get to either that. And then your student will drop in and then you'll see all of your various subjects that you can go in and change that. So you can set a different code if need be. And then you just click that save icon. Again, you can still do it at that test session level if you want. And that is the old way that we used to do it. That still applies. Okay, any questions about special circumstance codes? Okay, and then I will definitely blast out to assessment directors when that TA document is up and ready. I just got to finish a few more things on it before I can upload it to the Padlet for you. Okay, instructionally embedded assessments. With the sake of time, I'm not going to get into this, but your teachers have access to it. They are using it out there. We train on it. It is a great way to embed in that instructional cycle and do those benchmark trainings. Teachers that have engaged in this and LEAs that have engaged in this with fidelity have been reporting back that they feel like it has made a huge difference in overall proficiency for students. And I think as we were looking at 1% data, that as a whole, all of our DLM proficiency went up this year. But we know we've got more and more teachers every year engaging in these instructionally embedded assessments, and I 100% recommend it. Okay, folks, here is your checklist. So the things that you need to be working on is ensuring last year's score reports are going out. Teachers know that they're there, what to do with them, how to explain it to parents. They go out to parents. Going in and cleaning up your teacher accounts. If there's any teachers that need to be deactivated or removed, of course, adding your teachers. We can't get anything going with rosters until they're added. Ensuring that 1% flag is set on our students that need to be in DLM. You can start creating those rosters, ensuring that our teachers have completed their training, first contact surveys, and then all of your monitoring components. So please work out a way that you're going to start monitoring testing as that window opens. Okay, DLM teacher training information. I am doing one again tomorrow in Provo area. I'm doing another DLM training on Friday at USBE on the 24th. And then the last in-person training will be November 14th up in Ogden. And then January and February will be 2 virtual trainings to catch any of those like new teachers or last minute folks. So that Midas course, if you would like to send your teachers or even yourself want to come join that full day teacher training, there's the information. The Midas course is 65632. Here's links to all the amazing DLM manuals that we have. So this will be on that PowerPoint when I get that uploaded. Padlets. Please use this Padlet. This corkboard one is your district Padlet with all of your information, and that's where I will update and post TA documents as we go. And then if your teachers don't have this teacher Padlet, please get it to them. So same thing, we upload all kinds of things and give them quick button access to a lot of the DLM stuff. So there's not only administration stuff here, but also a lot of instructional things on these Padlets. So these are amazing. You should on this district Padlet, if you scroll all the way to the end, you'll see links to all of our other Padlets. We do have a Padlet created too for our teachers with this population of kiddos. That's all just additional instructional stuff. So those are great resources for your teachers. Okay, I am hoping that we covered the things that you needed covered. And I do want to allow you a minute to please fill out this training survey. So we use this in special education to gather information around all of our trainings that we do. So please take a minute to fill that out if you will. And then was there any questions that I didn't answer or anything that you still need help with?
Hey Tracy,
Yeah.
I did get a direct message. I saw that you posted the slide with all of the training dates and stuff, but I'll just read this question just to make sure it gets covered. It says, other than the Midas training, is there a specific date for the required training?
Nope. So that's a great question. So the required DLM training that lives in Educator Portal, teachers have to take it before they get access to test management. So they can't do any testing until they take it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, it will be locked down. In fact, they can't even click on that tab to get to anything.
Perfect.
Instructionally embedded assessments. Okay, Chandra, on that green blue Padlet, there's a whole column with instructionally embedded assessments, and there's some information there as well as a video from DLM that walks through how to set up that instructional plan. It really is quite easy. The biggest thing is teachers have to complete their training to do it, and they have to complete first contact survey on students and those P&P settings, and then they have access to that instructional planner. It's really cool. And it's really quite simple. Once teachers get in there and realize how simple it is, and they can actually assign, they can choose the linkage level to assign a testlet at for those essential elements. So it's really good. Okay, perfect. So, oh, will you take note of that, Emily, for me? So Jenny Show was in the room but not logged in. So because I need my participant lists to check off their Midas. Okay, perfect. If there's no other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. There's my contact information. Let me know. And then if you're an assessment director, you'll be hearing some of this repeated throughout the rest of the school year as we move about. But yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate ya.
Thank you.